Welcome, everyone. This is Debbie Maber with National Kitchen and Bath Association. If you're just joining us, you're here for our very first webinar of the month of September on living in place. Today's session is called Fall Prevention Using Safer Designs and Products. I want to thank Geberit for their generous sponsorship. And excuse me, today's session is provided to you by the Living in Place Institute. Erik Listou is one of the co-founders. He'll be our moderator today. We also have LaDonna Eriksen, Natalia Pierce, AKBD, and Dr. Monique Chabot. So Erik, if you're ready, we're ready to get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. She's quite the pro at this, and on our end, it can be technically challenging. She makes it easy. So thank you so much, Debbie. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining us, especially this month. This is Fall Prevention Month. The Living in Place Institute has established a goal. By the year 2028, we want to reduce home falls by 50% with safer designs and products. So that's what we're going to cover today, how to use safer designs and products. We have an amazing group of panelists here that I am so honored to have these folks here. Geberit, thank you so much for sponsoring this. You are part of helping to prevent falls, so thank you very much. And this is eligible for 0.1 NKBA CEUs. Thank you so much. Let's start by introducing these wonderful panelists. Monique Chabot. Monique, why don't you speak up and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Erik. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Monique Chabot. I am an occupational therapist, and I'm an assistant professor of OT at Thomas Jefferson University. My clinical background is in geriatric home health.
Thank you, Monique. Next up is LaDonna Eriksen.
Thank you, Erik. I am a retired adjunct professor of anatomy, physiology, and genetics, and I am also with the NKBA and am a kitchen and bathroom designer as well as a general contractor. I'm also an ambassador for Living in Place.
And LaDonna is now building her forever home in Omaha, Nebraska. Are you using a lot of these principles, LaDonna, in your home?
Definitely. Same as I use in all of my customers' homes.
Good to hear. Thank you. Natalia. Not hearing you, Natalia, right now.
Sorry, there
we go.
Needed to be unmuted. Hi, I'm Natalia. Thanks, Erik. I'm a kitchen and bath designer in Ottawa, Ontario, and new ambassador for Living in Place Institute, and have used many of the CLIP aspects into design, making places safer for everyday living.
Thank you. And we're especially honored Natalia's here because next month, just about a month from now, Natalia has been part of helping to bring CLIP to Canada. There's a team of volunteers who are putting together changes in our training manual. So we will have a CLIP Canada version, and that'll be next month in Toronto. And there's still time to register for that class. Myself, I'm Erik Listou. I'm the co-founder of the Living in Place Institute. This organization was founded just a few years ago by Louis Delaware, co-founder, and myself, to meet a need for helping designers and contractors and occupational therapists understand our respective roles, our responsibilities of working together to help make homes more accessible, comfortable, and safe. Really at the core of a lot of this is preventing falls. Consumers hear a lot about preventing falls through human interactions, meaning learning how to fall and proper nutrition and medications. And those are all extremely important. But what consumers are not aware of is the importance of products and designs. So this presentation, our experts are going to share with you some of their ideas and concepts that all of you listening in can embrace and use these to help everyone. So as a learning experience, we always like to point out our takeaways. We're going to learn fall statistics, how to reduce falls in bathrooms, stairs, flooring, how to use lighting and color and contrast to reduce falls. smart fall alerts, how to know if someone has fallen. Then we'll wrap it up with some next steps. We always like leaving you with, here's your next step. So let's jump into it now. And I'm going to ask Monique to take this section on fall statistics. Monique, I'll click the clicker, so we'll try to figure that out as we go. Welcome, Monique.
All right, thank you, Eric, for that. Areas that occupational therapists we talk about a lot and look at very frequently, especially in geriatric care. But when you look at how many people fall every year, you can see here that we start off in 2014 with 46 million, and we're projecting that it's going to be in about 74 million people every year by 2030, which is a very large number of people. And this is just older adults ages 65 and older. And when you look at more of the statistics here, you see 1 in 4 seniors fall every year, and only half will say anything. And one of the reasons for that is because if you weren't hurt, they're actually embarrassed often to say something, because when you start talking about falling, there's this implication that it means that they're not doing well at home. And then they're usually quite fearful of the conversation that will come. But the issue with falls is that it will double your chance of falling again, either because of an injury that did actually occur or a fear of falling, which we'll talk about later. But the most important part on here, I think, to look at is the fact that 60% of all falls occur at home, and 30% of those people will be hospitalized. So there's still 30% of people who won't be. And when you look at the number of people who end up being admitted to long-term care, it's usually people 75 and older who fall, and they're 4 to 5 times more likely to end up going to long-term care, usually because it results in some sort of serious injury that prevents them from going back home. And I will say that in my practice, I can tell you that a fall, we call it the start of the slippery slope of decline, because people rarely come out of them, especially as they get older, the same. And they usually end up having to live in a long-term care facility instead. And it all stems back to a fall. So even if they're not injured, here's that fear of falling that I was mentioning. Because it's such a traumatic event, I'm sure we've all slipped and fell at some point in our lives, and it's not exactly what I would consider a good time. They're so afraid of falling, again, because they know the implications and what can happen to them, that they start doing things like not going out as much. They will tend to shuffle their feet, which is actually worse to do. You're far more likely to trip over your own feet in that situation than if you took normal steps. They also restrict what they do within their home itself just because of that fear. And the more restricted their lifestyle, the more sedentary it becomes, the weaker they become, and then that in turn affects their leg strength and their balance. And it turns into a very vicious cycle. And also we do know that social isolation from being afraid to go out and interact with the community, their family, their friends, church, or whatever it is that they like to do, has a strong correlation to depression. And loneliness and depression we consider also a public health emergency in our older adults in my field, because of the negative health risks that come along with having depression. So as we mentioned, most people don't admit to having the fall. If they haven't been injured, they don't want to say anything because it says that something's going on with them and they are afraid of those implications. But there actually is a lot of injuries that come from them. You can see that 30 million falls resulted in 7 million injuries. And these range from bruises to broken bones to, unfortunately, brain injuries. 95% of hip fractures are caused by falling. And when we talk about falls in my field, the hip is actually what we look at the most often, because a hip fracture has a direct correlation to decreased mobility, to needing to use a walker or a cane for the rest of your life if you're ever able to walk again. And also, a decent number of people will die as a result of a fall. Either the fall itself was that traumatic, or because they did actually hit their head and didn't know, and they didn't report the fall or go get checked out, and they developed a hematoma, which can be very dangerous. And so as they're having these incidences and having decreased mobility, decreased independence in their daily life, increased fear and inability to do things, they end up moving out of their home to get more assistance, usually prematurely. 40% of falls in older adults result in a traumatic brain injury, and actually falls is the leading cause of traumatic brain injuries in our older adults. It goes from motor vehicle accidents in middle and younger adulthood to falls when you hit 65 and older when you look at the statistics. And so a lot of people actually do hit their head when they go down, and it can result in what we call subdermal hematoma. So they have blood on their brain under their skull. And if it's not caught, it does lead to death. And even if it is caught, sometimes there is a lasting effect. And so sometimes they don't catch it right away. They take some time to develop, and then they go back to the emergency room within 90 days because they're starting to see the effects of that brain injury developing. And it says on here, injuries to the brain take a long time to heal. And honestly, if they heal at all, there's usually some residual cognitive effects from the brain injury itself and from being in the hospital during that healing process. Most often we think about broken bones, though. We see a lot of people who have fractured their hip, which actually really is the head of their femur in the leg. It's not the hip itself most of the time. You also see spinal fractures. I also see a lot of hand and wrist fractures because people will put their hands out to catch themselves. So what we call a fouche injury in the wrist is very, very common to see. Usually people will fall sideways, and 95% of hip fractures are caused by falls because they go down that way. Another fun fact for you is that calcium and vitamin D are really great for building bones and something that most people should be taking, but they're not completely a fall preventative or hip fracture preventative measure. You actually have to be doing weight-bearing exercises as well because you can't control where those things go. So a lot of people are also lulled into that false sense of security that they're taking medicine to help them. Within all of those hip fractures, though, the rate for women is twice of that than for men, and that's just because there's an increased risk of osteoporosis with women than with men, and that area in the hip is exactly where the osteoporosis tends to hit. But the one that always scares me, and that's why I know I work so hard on the physical side, the human side, on top of the environmental side, to avoid falls, is because 1 in 5 hip fractures, or people who have a hip fracture, will actually die within a year of their injury. And that is a very sound statistic that has been verified over and over again because of that slippery slope of decline that happens. So what you see here, we kind of talked about this already, where there's definitely an impact on their mobility. They're going to start needing mobility-related devices. A fracture to the hip, depending on how it heals, can become very hard to climb stairs, even as little as 5, based on how it heals and what they did to fix it. A lot of people will have trouble with toileting because it's really hard to get up and off the toilet again when you've had a hip fracture. It's very painful. And you'll also have trouble getting in and out of a chair. Again, we think about how you might be sitting right now. There's a lot of bending going on at your hips. They will need either assistance or modifications to their chairs at a higher height to make it easier for them. They also cost us a lot of money. Just a couple of years ago, we were at $50 billion. By next year, they're thinking it's going to cost us about $68 billion. So it is one of our most expensive medical conditions because once they fall, there's the ambulance, the emergency room, acute care to stabilize them, inpatient rehabilitation, and then when they come home, they'll be followed up usually with home health, nursing, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. And then if they go to outpatient. So all of that actually costs a lot of money. The hospital part alone is $30,000. And when they get older, the cost goes up just because there's a lot more comorbidities that come into play. And it is also, people are more fragile and they take longer sometimes to heal. And within this, their insurance will only typically cover about 75% of the cost. Like I know when I was being paid by Medicare, Medicare only paid 80% of my services. Hopefully they had a secondary that would cover the rest. And assisted living typically is not covered by Medicare. That is an out-of-pocket cost. I think we've kind of been playing around with this, obviously, with more people getting older every year, with the rate of falls, just by the fact that we have more people who will be in that category. We're anticipating that it's going to increase about 7 falls deaths every hour by 2030. And within the past nearly 10 years alone, 9 years, it's increased 30%. So we have something in my field, we call it intrinsic and extrinsic factors related to falling. Intrinsic ones are these ones that are within you. So age does play a role. When you get older, your balance does get affected. Your muscles naturally become a little bit weaker. There are things you can do to help prevent that or to get it fixed. It's not a death sentence by any stretch of the imagination. People do have high and low blood pressure. I've had people who'd be standing next to me and all of a sudden their blood pressure drops so low that I'm catching them because they fall immediately, and there was no factor that said that was going to happen. Lower body weakness is very common, especially in the knees, hips, and ankles. Dizziness can occur. It's just harder to walk. People have to go to the bathroom much more at night, and so they're walking in the dark to get to the bathroom. Dehydration also is a very serious problem. People start drinking a lot less, mainly because they're afraid they're going to have to use the bathroom more. And then dehydration affects them just the same ways it affects all of us. And vitamin D deficiencies. So vitamin D actually is really important for a lot of our biological processes. And so we're all deficient in vitamin D anyway. And that does increase your fall risk. You'll also see just age-related changes in vision, hearing, strength, short-term memory, and even how you can balance yourself within your inner ear, or understanding how far you are away from objects. That's proprioception. So there's things that just happen with age that have to be accommodated. And with the vision, they just require, I think, up to 40% more light to see the same thing as someone who is younger. Poor lighting when I do my home modifications is probably the number one thing I address. Lighting is never good enough, especially above stairwells and in bathrooms. A lot of people will wear improper footwear, like comfy slippers, and it's very easy to trip on those. And then you start looking at the other intrinsic factors, like the home hazards, which are those are the things that we can affect very easily with our home modifications. I have a lot of people who trip on thresholds or broken tiles in their homes. Don't get me started on throw rugs. They definitely are a huge trip hazard. Also, people have clutter in their homes, and pets can be very dangerous as well. A lot of people tripping over cats and dogs. Or just not being aware of where they are. And then I also see a lot of slippery flooring and surfaces, especially in the bathrooms and kitchens. Something else that we see a lot is medication errors. And also polypharmacy. So when you start taking more than 4 medications a day, that's called polypharmacy. And they see here that 40% take over 5. And the different medications will start interacting with each other quite often, and that increases your risk for falls. A lot of times, too, I've got people who aren't taking the right medications at the right time. They're not taking their blood pressure medicine because their blood pressure was fine that day, or they've forgot that they took it and they're taking twice as much. Same thing, I see that a lot with metformin, which is a diabetes medication. And so that ends up usually leading to a fall because their blood sugar or their blood pressure has gone up or down, and then they end up in the hospital. And there is a direct correlation to these kinds of issues with decreased cognition as well. And then not being aware of how these things interact with food, drugs, and other supplements. In terms of working with people who have medical conditions, it's really important that we always refer out to the appropriate people. I would never dream of making recommendations to medication. That's what a pharmacist does. And likewise, if someone has a medical condition, it is always a good plan to talk to a physician, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, people who are especially trained in the medical conditions and how it interacts with people's daily lives. I get a lot of requests on where exactly a grab bar should be, because I understand their people's physical strength, their balance, what pain they might be having in their shoulder, and what they really need in order to be able to get up off the toilet, for example. And so if someone has a medical condition, it's always a good plan to speak to a medical professional when you're making your recommendations and all of us working together.
This is tremendous advice. Monique, or Dr. Chabot, thank you so much for being part of this. I've just learned a lot. There's some new information there that I wasn't familiar with. So thank you for sharing that with everybody. Reducing falls. 80% of the falls happen in the bathroom. So that's going to be our first place to look. And I'm going to ask our educator, builder, designer, wonderful person, LaDonna, tell us about some of the things we can do in a bathroom. And a lot of these, as you've said, are going to be in your home.
Thank you, Eric. As Monique and Eric mentioned, 80% of the falls in the home occur in the bathroom, and Monique told us that 60% of the falls occur in homes. So we see that a lot of falling occurs in bathrooms for anyone. It doesn't necessarily mean an aging person. Anyone can slip and fall in a bathroom, especially if there's a slick floor. So as you design a bathroom, you have to be careful in looking at that tile to make sure that it isn't slick, or adding a preventative solution that can actually stop that tile from being slick. Many of these falls are preventable with design and properly installed products, which are often very subtle. When planning a bathroom, the designer needs to remember that the space necessary to accommodate navigation of a wheelchair is 60 to 67 inches. As well, allowing 60 inches of open wall space will aid for transfer from the chair to the toilet, either with a person alone or with assistance. At the least, a grab bar installed next to the toilet will assist all users of that toilet. A horizontal grab bar next to the sink can have a double use of grab bar and towel bar. When dealing with these smaller rooms, doors that swing out or a pocket door will allow not only that space necessary for movement in the small room, but will also allow rescue of a person who may fall in that room and become wedged against the door. No matter what bathroom you're designing, night lights on outlets, switches, and near sinks helps all users. Monique mentioned that increased nighttime bathroom visits can often cause falls for someone who is older. These night lights and this lighting in the bathroom helps that person, if nothing else, to find that switch so they can turn on the light. An outlet behind the toilet can be used for both a night light as well as a heated toilet seat with a light, or a personal hygiene seat with a light. Older style toilets were between 13 to 15 inches floor to seat. Chairs have always been produced with a seat height of approximately 18 inches. So it stands to reason that a taller toilet is easier to use and would indeed reduce falls. The Comfort Height toilet measures between 17 to 19 inches tall. Showers with curbs are a major trip hazard in any bathroom for anyone. The pre-slope floor systems that we can use for showers have center drains built in and are sloped for 100% water evacuation. These are relatively easy to install since the subfloor does not need to be lowered or raised, allowing the floor inside and outside of the shower to be the same height. A shower trench drain is often called a linear drain. It is a long, narrow trough that runs along the side that's open or the back side of a curbless shower. Water flows across the shower floor into the gutter or trench and into a standard drain. The trench is covered with a metal or plastic grate, flush with the shower and room floor. Prior to the advent of a linear drain, the shower floor would have multiple compound slopes to a center drain. These center drains make it difficult and unsafe for many people. For example, a person unsteady on his or her feet, or someone using a freestanding shower chair or a shower wheelchair. When curbless showers are constructed with a trench-style drain, compound slopes in the shower floor can be eliminated and a stepless entry provided. A floor with a single slope is safer for most users and makes it possible to install the same tile size throughout the bathroom and the shower. Many people opt for a curbless shower just simply because it is so attractive. The shower controls have classically been misplaced. The controls should be installed close to the entrance of the shower area or the tub to avoid leaning over too far, which will help prevent falling, as getting hit with that cold water when you first turn it on. A person can jump and slip and fall at the same time. A comfortable height for this shower control is about 44 inches. Having a grab bar near the controls will also assist in preventing falls. I've been mentioning grab bars, and the first thing that comes to mind of most people are those ugly stainless steel grab bars found in commercial settings. The grab bars today are not your grandma's grab bars. We now have beautiful colors, great texture to reduce slippage, and grab bars that can have double duty. When installing grab bars, we do not advise anchoring into backing or a stud. Too often a stud can crack over time or become soft with age or water seepage, especially in a shower. There are fastening systems that can install directly into the wall board and tile, not needing an attachment to structural support, and surpasses the American with Disabilities Act and all building code requirements. Most of these systems allows for the installation of grab bars in all building wall substrates in about 10 to 15 minutes. The best diameter for a grab bar for most adults is about 1.5 inches. If you're working with a person with a challenge, consultation with a physical therapist or occupational therapist is absolutely necessary. You aren't always sure of what type of grab bar that person needs because of their challenge that they have. So make sure you talk to their physical therapist, doctor, or occupational therapist. Remember also to place grab bars in locations to allow a person to hold on to something to prevent falls when adjusting water temperature, leaving or entering the shower or tub, sitting or rising from the shower seat. We have looked at grab bars near the toilet and the sink. Another type of grab bar is a tiltable assist rail that can be tilted up and out of the way when not in use. When properly installed, these have a capacity of 400 pounds. Grab poles are also a good option to use with an existing tub and can be either pressure mounted between the ceiling and floor or can be bolted in. When installed with bolts, these can hold up to 450 pounds. The horizontal bar that you see him holding there locks in place every 45 inches. As mentioned previously, these grab bars that we see pictured here provide double duty use and are a more subtle device for that customer who questions the need for grab bars. Towel bar, soap dish, corner shelf, tissue holder, and shower controls can all be useful grab bar devices. The customer will thank you the first time one of these subtle devices helps to prevent a fall. Previously, I mentioned personal hygiene toilet seats. Even though the bidet was invented in the 17th century France, it was not until the 1960s that the bidet toilet seat was invented. Surprisingly, the history of the bidet toilet seat begins in the United States. Arnold Cohen, aka Mr. Bidet, invented the first bidet toilet seat and founded the American Bidet Company in the 1960s. He was motivated by his father's medical condition. Mr. Bidet's new device placed a spraying nozzle into a toilet seat to help his father clean himself. A toilet seat bidet is a sit-down wash basin that is convenient and promotes cleanliness. Long considered to be a luxury bathroom fixture, bidet seats are becoming a common addition to any bathroom. The bidet uses water to provide a gentle cleansing and will help you conserve water and energy. Bidet seats are easy to install and use, and while requiring minimum maintenance. And the pricing for these seats has dropped drastically since their appearance in the marketplace in the 1960s. With that outlet that you've installed behind the toilet during the remodel or new construction, these seats are easy to connect to water and plug into the GFCI protected outlet at a future time. These can come with self-opening and closing lids, heated seats, and of course, warm water cleansing and hands-free warm air drying. A wall-mounted toilet will provide for custom height during installation and allows for more space in the room when space is an issue and much easier to clean around and underneath. And all of us want that help in cleaning around and beneath toilets. Heated floors will also help to minimize slipping, since water spills will dry much faster on a heated floor than on a cold one. The warmth will reduce reactions to temperature changes, especially for individuals with neuropathy or other temperature sensitivity disorders. These reactions can cause a person to jump, to move quickly, and get off balance and fall in that bathroom. Some heated floor systems can be installed into the shower, so the shower floor can also be warm. And of course, you can also heat that shower seat as well as the toilet seat. If you've installed a heated toilet seat and a heated floor, it just stands to reason that the shower floor and the seat should be heated. All of my customers always talk about getting the warm tushy.
LaDonna, I have a question for you. Will you have one of those new toilet seats installed in your new home?
Absolutely.
Many folks have not experienced those toilet seats, and when you do, it's this kind of a strange sensation. Once you get used to it, believe the stories where people say they waited till they got home. There's nothing like sitting on a warm toilet seat. Some evidence shows that that type of toilet seat with the full functioning washing and drying can reduce urinary tract infections by as much as 80%. And Monique, isn't it true that one of the main reasons for going into assisted living is toilet hygiene?
It is. It's actually one of the biggest reasons, is because it's the one area where the older adult and the family really, that's where they draw the line at assistance for purely dignity reasons, which I wouldn't blame anybody either.
Yeah, that none of us want to call the neighbor and ask him to come over and help with us. But using that toilet seat, I personally have one, and they're wonderful. They're actually absolutely wonderful. Reducing falls on stairs. Let's talk a little specifics about key areas in homes. And I'm going to turn it over to Natalia. Natalia, would you like to lead this section for us, please? Not hearing you, Natalia.
Oh, sorry, clicking buttons.
Okay.
Absolutely. Stairs are probably one of the biggest challenges that anybody has, whether it be through age or if you've had a personal injury, whether it's been before or after a fall. It can be one of the biggest challenge areas in a home. Lighting is really a key issue when it comes to stairs and hallways. They can be difficult to light above just because of ceiling heights. One other major thing with older homes that I've discovered is and it's important to really check the depth of the stair tread and the height of the rise to ensure that they meet current building codes. They've adjusted building codes over the years because of safety issues, making sure that that tread length isn't too long or too short is really important for managing falls. At any age, really. If you've got an awkward tread, the stairs are too steep or they're too not steep enough, it can cause just kind of a mobility issue where you're not raising your foot enough or too much, and it can cause tripping and falling. The lighting does really help with the contrast, which we'll talk about in a little bit. When you have difficulty with just regular stairs, and sometimes mobility just doesn't allow for safe transport up and down stairs if you're in a two-story home, there are many other mechanical options. And when it's difficult for an individual, there's the seated stair lifts that are powered by battery. They extend above and beyond the top and bottoms of the stairs for safe and easy transport and the adjustment from the chair to the landing area. So the amount of assisted devices that are available are much easier to find now. There are other options with the platform lifts. If an individual is restricted to a wheelchair or a walker, and the transport from an assistive device into a lift can be more complicated. It also requires a little bit of assistance at times, whereas a full lift or a platform lift can give that independence back too, that they can move from one floor to the other without assistance. They've got a safety rail that slides down around and basically just mimics the stair size. So depending on the need of the client and the assisted devices that they may have, the platform lift can be a safer option than a transport chair. Vertical lifts are similar to an elevator. They transport safely from one level to another. They're a little bit less expensive, or quite a bit less expensive than a full elevator system, and they don't require the additional square footage for that bulky mechanical or electrical components. They also have a greater weight capacity than the platform lifts, and don't require as much vertical travel as well. So that can be an option as well, depending on the square footage that you've got to devote to such a device.
Natalia, could this same vertical platform lift, could that be installed in a garage or outside?
Oh, absolutely. And because you've got less, it's limited to the 14 feet, but if you've got from the garage floor up into the house, which is often, there's always that transition, it's a great option when you've got the indoors too. Elevators, which everybody always thinks is kind of a luxury if you've got one in your home. But again, sometimes it's just a really nice necessity that you can add. They have a lot more flexibility as far as weight capacity, size, and height restrictions are much more limited. You pretty much have any option. It isn't an entirely enclosed cabin that the individual will ride in, but it also provides a great amount of independence and safety for a particular individual, depending on the equipment. If you're looking at a possible addition of an elevator into a home, it's also great when you are laying it out or planning. You can have closet space that are stacked from one floor to the other. You can have, an open space that allows for that integration of a device like that in a future date too.
All right, Natalia, what about on floors? We all walk on floors all the time and we just take it for granted. Do you think that there's falls that occur because, or maybe I'll restate it, do you think we can reduce falls on floors? And if so, let our listeners know how to do that, Natalia.
Well, it's funny. I've been seeing a lot of trends of the strong mosaics and big contrasting, strips and squares within a floor. And I can't help but think, as beautiful as they are, that they cause such a perceptual challenge for a lot of individuals. And if you've got visual challenges or your ability of perception of depth is compromised at a time, all those funky floors and those beautiful mosaics and stuff like that do really play a lot of challenges to those with the visual impairments. The other major issue is slip factors, and I know LaDonna brought that up with bathrooms, and everybody loves that lovely spa high gloss tile, but in all realities, when you step on that with a wet foot, and if you're moving through a threshold of a tub or a shower, your balance is, and your center of gravity is off. And if you don't have something to hang on to in the use of grab bars, that can really cause, a catastrophic fall, which is, again, what we're trying to prevent. So the visual effects of the contrasting floors and prints, trying to maintain the consistency of a floor coloring from room to room is also really important. Those nasty thresholds that have any kind of a height difference, if you're moving from a tile floor to a carpet or a vinyl floor, it can often cause trouble, especially if you're dealing with wheelchairs or walkers, anything that has to roll across the floor. It can be really a bit of a challenge for that in a lot of cases. So when you're selecting a flooring for your client, you also want to look at something that's durable, that can withstand the weight of the wheelchair, as the pressure points on each wheel can cause a lot of additional pressures for tile that can cause cracking and stuff like that. So definitely something to consider when selecting flooring, for sure. We talked a little bit about helping to reduce the friction or increase friction on floors with bathrooms to avoid slip factors. I always find natural stones have just an innate ability to have a lower slip factor. Slate is one of my favorites to use in entryways because it just has a natural ability to not be slippery, but really be aware of what you're selecting in areas where floors can become wet. So bathrooms, entryways, things like that. So you want to make sure that you've got the proper slip resistant material for sure. Talk a little bit about flooring types, and there's, the world of flooring is so great. And again, we talked a little bit about the consideration of transitions, and when you're selecting flooring, think a lot about subfloor preparations that are needed. If you're doing any type of natural stone or porcelain tile or ceramic tile, it's really important to consider what that subfloor, depending on the home, what that needs, because the buildup of that might create a very awkward transition based on the connecting floor that it's going to. Again, the adjacent floor between those rooms is really important so that you've got a safe transition. Bases of bathtubs and showers. Older bathtubs, especially the ceramic steel, have just an incredible slip factor to them, not just in the well of the bathtub, but also along the sides. I don't know if you've ever leaned on the side of an old tub. You can slip off even if you're trying to brace yourself or help yourself get up. So having those slip resistant mats or strips that you can add. If you've got an older tub, some of the newer materials that they're putting in, like the fiberglass or the acrylic tubs, they have a natural non-slip factor to them that may not require a mat, because sometimes you can trip on the mat if it gets bunched up or causing a slip factor in its own. So lighting.
You said you're going to cover a little bit about lighting. So tell us a little bit about lighting and color contrast and how you use those to help prevent falls.
It's probably one of my favorite things because it's probably one of the most overlooked aspects of design. It's getting better. The lighting world has changed so dramatically since the inception of LEDs, and the need, I believe it was Monique that talked about the need for more lighting as we age, going up to increase up to 40%. So We talk a little bit about lighting intensity and how we measure that light. The further away a light source is, the less useful it becomes. So if you've got vaulted ceilings or higher ceilings, it becomes a real challenge to get a quality of light down to the surface. The certain fixtures can also cause rings of light or shadows, and again, it causes those perceptual differences that, somebody might see a dark spot on a floor, and try and step over it and find themselves tripping over, basically just a shadow. So when you're covering various areas, it's really important to have consistent lighting, so similar light colors from room to room, so that you don't cause a huge perceptual change as well. It's difficult to have your eyes focus or adjust if you've got one room that's particularly bright and another room that's softer lighting or more dull. Differences in light temperature too from room to room can also have an effect on individuals as well. We talk a little bit about color contrast and its usefulness in creating those horizontal perspectives. So it used to be that everybody thought the decorative strip in a bathroom or in a shower area was purely decorative, but it actually has a very functional and useful technique to it by creating that horizontal balance line. It's like a perspective or a horizontal horizon line that people can find, that they get their bearings if they're a little unsteady or unsure. So you can also create that the contrast levels on edges of stairs, whether you do it with a change of color of the stairs or lighting. You can also use some of the anti-slip strips too that come in deeper colors depending on your stair material. We talked a little bit about color contrast and the light reflective value of your light source against the color of your finishes, your materials. So this works into how light in the room is absorbed on your walls and your floors, your furniture, your cabinetry, your countertops. This all plays into a factor of the value and the quality of the light that you have provided for the room. So it is definitely something that you want to keep mindful of. There's also the recommended contrast difference between colors. The higher the difference of the light reflective value, the greater the contrast. So definitely keep that in mind when you're adding fixtures and finishes into a space. So a good use of contrast, as you can see in the image on the left, which handrail you see is better to see. It's much easier to grasp when you can clearly define where to grab from. Changes of door color to the walls, contrasting hardware, and different lighting techniques that you can add, as well as any of the anti-slip strips with a little bit of contrast.
Some great information, Natalia. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Makes me think differently about designing. Let me cover a little bit about smart fall alerts. We're not talking about that, to me, the world's worst ad where that woman was laying in the floor and said, "I fell and I can't get up." We've come a long ways since that. Now we can actually electronically know when someone is falling. There are fall sensors. This new Apple Watch can sense when someone's taken a fall, and it can actually automatically call services. They usually go through an intermediary and not directly to the 911. They may go to a service, but it's a way to know actually when someone is falling and know immediately. Because if you fall, you're probably not going to be thinking of where's the button I need to push. You may not be able to. Here's a hearing aid. This hearing aid also has a fall sensor and a heart rate monitor built into it. What a great concept. In case someone does fall, the advice that we even used when we started this program was having a telephone in the bathroom. Well, technology has come along in just a few years and allowed a device like this. It's a smart speaker, so you could actually just vocalize and call for help or ask for a loved one. I promise you next steps. We've learned a lot of information. This is just the tip of the iceberg for what we all as professionals need to know. So let's start wrapping it up and then we'll invite some questions. Your next steps. First, change your thinking. We've all been prone to thinking this advice and these issues and these problems and these designs are all for just somebody else, just for older adults. All of us. Every 2 weeks, a child dies because a piece of furniture fell on them in a home. We should all be strapping furniture back for any age. So let's change our thinking. Let's embrace this concept of everything we do needs to be safer. Let's follow the advice of these experts we've had today. Step 2 is education. You're here now. You're already ahead of many others. Education, education, education. Learn everything you can. Isn't this what we've always done? Isn't this in part why we are members of the NKBA? Because the NKBA helps bring us information and education. The third step is to be proactive. Join Goal 2028, I mentioned. There's a reference on our website to that. Be proactive. Help us all. It's our responsibility. Let's help reduce falls 50% with safer designs and products. Earlier, I mentioned that this is something that consumers hadn't been made aware of. Last year, the AARP Bulletin distributed to over 30 million older adults in this country all had a reference to Goal 2028. This was launched through AARP. So consumers are aware of this. They are looking for these. They want you to follow the advice from our panelists. Their clients want you to make their home safe. Most of them just don't want to talk about it. So let's just be active. Let's change our thinking. Safe design is for everyone. Let's learn how to do that and let's be proactive. We learned today some great statistics on falls. Sad, but good to know. Thank you, Monique. Reducing falls in bathrooms, stairs, floors, lighting. LaDonna and Natalia, thank you so much for being here and being part of this and helping us to understand it's not that difficult. We don't have to do a lot. We just need to understand what are the better products now. The smart fall alerts. My dad, a few years ago, he said he's not at that age yet to need a neck pendant. My dad will turn 95 in a month. So I think my next conversation with him, probably in about an hour, I'm going to ask him, so Dad, your watch, have you seen these new cool watches? My dad likes technology and techie stuff. So maybe I can convince my dad to get a watch or his hearing aids. He's been complaining about his hearing aids. I need to suggest to him that he gets some new hearing aids, ones that will actually perform medical analysis at the same times. Any last comments you would like to make? We'll start with you, LaDonna. Any last bit of advice you'd like to leave with our visitors?
I guess one of the major things is the fact that in bathrooms, especially, making sure that the door either opens out or is a pocket door so someone doesn't get trapped in that bathroom.
Good idea.
Also, just so we can make sure that those slipping on that shiny tile, I see it so many times, and you can prevent it even with a product that you can put on that tile.
Thank you so much for being here, LaDonna. Monique, from the medical perspective, any last thoughts from you or suggestions to our audience?
The one thing I think I can say is it's really important to see the person as a whole person, everything that's going on in their life, internally, externally, and the environment around them, so that we can make the best choices with them on what to do.
Thank you. And one important emphasis from the Certified Living in Place Professional Program is that we all know the tradespeople, we all know the partners, we all know the team we create. on projects. What we know now, thanks to Monique, we probably need a medical professional involved. Let me change that. Not probably, we do. How many bathroom and kitchen remodels need an electrician? All of them. How many bathroom remodels and kitchen remodels should have a medical professional? If you've asked the question to your clients, do you have friends or family that might have some challenges in life? If they say yes, and most of them will, then you know you need to bring someone like a Monique just quietly into the project to make sure that we're also paying attention to what the human being needs in the home. Natalia, we'd love to hear a final comment from you.
I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've, by being involved with the Living in Place Institute, is making timeless designs. So making those adjustments with the products that are so widely available for showers to do, the level entry, to get away from the curbs and all the tiny tile and all of that. It, I just integrate that into as many projects as I possibly can. And, whether the individual client needs it at the time or not, it will be appreciated longer down the road.
Hey, Eric, I'm not hearing you speak. Hello, everybody. Here,
Thank
wait.
you everyone for joining in. We appreciate you, LaDonna, Monique, and Natalia, for sharing your wisdom and being proactive in making these changes. We're all comforted knowing that your clients will all have safer homes. Big thanks to Geberit for hosting the webinars this month. You're doing the right thing with helping to promote education. Debbie, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for making this flow so smoothly. Are there any questions that anyone would like to pose? We only have about 4 minutes left. If you have questions now, Debbie, we'll let you look at the chat room because I'm not seeing that on my screen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric. Yes, there are quite a few. So one of the persons said, how do you get the permission to speak to medical professionals? Is there a form that clients need to sign?
Well, good question. You're talking about the HIPAA, Health Information Portability and Protection Act. That's something that medical professionals use, but we have to be aware to not discuss personal medical issues with anyone. That's private information that someone has shared with us. If you feel that you do need to share sensitive medical information, then that's why you bring in the medical professional. They understand that documentations, they're licensed, and they're also insured to cover that. Great question. Thank you for that.
Okay, I think we might have covered this, but is there a solution that's recommended for slick tile?
Slick tile, well, the first is, replace it permanently. But one of the slides here, and you can see this later, Debbie will tell us how, there are coatings that you can put on tile that will give them a less slippery surface.
And how about the same for vinyl or hardwood?
Vinyl and hardwood, a little bit more difficult because you can't put a coating on it. Hardwood should be a satin finish that will actually help the slip resistance. And vinyl flooring, change the vinyl to one of the new types of luxury vinyl floorings, very inexpensive to buy, inexpensive to install. And most of them now have greatly increased slip resistance. Manufacturers are paying attention.
Okay, a couple more. So here's one. How do you introduce the topic of a safe home? We find that when we tell people to prepare for people who might visit or think about children who might have sports injuries, is a good way to start with that topic. The other additional comment to this is no clients want to think that they're going to need this stuff. So I think they're asking, how do you introduce this safe home topic?
That's really a great question. Myself, I've taught aging and universal design classes for many, many years. And as a practicing designer and contractor, I heard the same thing. We don't want to know that. We're going to stay in our house forever. That doesn't pertain to us. Well, the one suggestion I like is to just simply ask, Do you have family or friends that might have some challenges in your life? And when you ask, you just subtly shake your head yes. That's some body language. The person will probably say yes. They may even tell you about some of their family members. Well, then let's make sure we make it safe for them. Always talk about the benefits for someone else in the home.
Good idea. Great. Okay, here's another one. What flooring do you recommend for kitchens? Bamboo and cork dent easily. Other types of flooring are hard if someone falls.
Again, a great question. My personal favorite is luxury vinyl flooring. I just love that product. Again, it's simple, easy. I first learned about that through the commercial industry, and I realized what they were doing was right. Um, the vinyl industry was smart when they called it luxury vinyl. So you don't have to tell your clients, we're going to take out your beautiful hardwood or tile, and most of those you can just cover right over. We're going to install some luxury vinyl tile. And everybody says, ooh, luxury.
Yes, it makes all the difference with the terminology, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Here's another one. Can you use a wall-mounted toilet for a 450-pound client?
Always check the weight ratings on devices. If you're not sure, then go for a higher rating. A 450-pound person, if they sit down abruptly in a toilet, it may be much more weight, but that same weight person on a traditional toilet sitting on a piece of subfloor may have the same issues. That's where you want to really start engaging in your team, perhaps a structural engineer. Someone can help you understand those loading requirements, a medical professional to help you understand that person's current weight. Is it going to go up or down? Always plan for the future. Always think. But you can check with those manufacturers. Those wall toilet systems now can go into 3.5-inch wall cavities. You can preset the height of the toilet, not after the fact, but when it's being installed. And it opens up the floor, looks great. But yes, check the facts.
Thank you. And then a final one. Is there really no need for in-wall blocking for grab bars? But what if you have the opportunity during the full renovation?
That's a really tough question. Here's how I'll try to answer it. If you put in wall blocking, how can you guarantee it's going to hold? How can you guarantee it's going to hold the screw? What species of wood are you using? What's the grain pattern? Are the holes pre-drilled? These are all questions that you cannot tell on site. It seems to make sense that that would work, but you're guessing. There are anchors made. There are specific wall anchors made. You can buy a wall anchor from a big box store or buy it online for about 10 bucks. That one wall anchor drilled into a tile and drywall wall. One anchor will hold 800 pounds, just one anchor. So why not use those types of anchors? The blocking, when you try to put blocking in, where are you putting it? Grab bars we recommend, and I don't like calling them grab bars. I'd rather ask the client, don't you want to install a nice towel bar in the shower area so you can hang a washcloth and it will change all their other towel bars to match? I'm talking about a grab bar. You don't know where the person's going to need it. If a person has a challenge or if their family members have a challenge, then the medical professional is going to help direct you where to install it. And it may not be where you thought the blocking should be. So let's just make life simple and use the right kind of anchors. The exception would be in an older home. We don't know how that drywall was installed. That's where you have the construction expert, somebody to help you understand the structure of the home and how it's built. And maybe you need to just simply change the tile in the drywall to a code compliant surface that those anchors are engineered for. Great question. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Erik, LaDonna, Monique, and Natalia. And once again, we want to thank Gebert for their generous sponsorship for the month of September. Thanks all for your great information. This has been a fantastic webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you everyone for listening in and connect with us. We'd love to talk to you more.